If grocery stores run out of food tomorrow, most homes will starve in just 3 days, but yours doesn't have to be one of them. While other items go without warning, some essential foods are slowly vanishing without anyone knowing. Today, I'm revealing the 15 foods quietly disappearing from stores that you need to stockpile. Stop waiting for the news and start building a kitchen that doesn't wait for the supply chain. Ready? Number 15. Canned tomatoes. Imagine a staple so embedded in home cooking that losing it would unravel half your recipe list overnight. That is canned tomatoes. Chili, soups, pasta sauce, stews, pizza base. If you cook at home, you are using tomato products constantly without even thinking about it. California grows about 95% of the processing tomatoes in the United States, and California's water situation is not recovering. Less water means less crop. Less crop means less product on shelves. But here is the kicker. Tariffs on imported tomatoes mean the backup supply that would normally compensate for domestic shortfalls is economically unviable for most retailers. A procurement manager for a major grocery chain told me their tomato orders are being filled at about 67 cents on the dollar. I personally checked 4 stores last weekend. 3 had noticeably bare sections. A can that cost 99 cents 6 months ago is now $1.49. That is a 50% increase with shortages still building. My approach is 10 cans every shopping trip across diced, crushed, sauce and paste. Keep rotating. Stay consistent. Tomatoes covered. Now let's talk about what cooks your food. Number 14. Cooking oils. You already know this one from daily use. You just never thought about it disappearing. Vegetable oil, canola, olive oil, every single one. The situation is genuinely global, and it is not getting fixed anytime soon. Sunflower oil has been gutted by the conflict overseas. 2 of the world's largest producers essentially vanished from global markets overnight, and the scramble to replace them has overwhelmed every alternative source. But here is what nobody is saying. As fuel prices stay elevated, it is more profitable for producers to sell vegetable oils into the biodiesel market than onto your grocery shelf. A buyer for a regional grocery chain told me cooking oil is one of the most difficult categories to keep in stock right now. Vegetable oil that was $3 for a large bottle is now pushing $8 in some areas. Olive oil is worse. For long-term storage, keep oil in a cool, dark place. Heat and light cause it to go rancid faster. Vegetable and canola oil last 1 to 2 years unopened. Buy what you use, keep replacing what you open, and build that buffer before the next price spike lands. Oils handled. Now let's talk about the protein getting squeezed from every direction. Number 13. Canned fish. This is the food that works when everything else requires cooking or refrigeration. Open the can, and you have a complete high-protein meal with 0 preparation required. And right now, it is under pressure from both sides, supply and price. Global fish stocks are facing serious strain from overfishing, shifting ocean temperatures, and changing migration patterns. Tuna fishing quotas are being cut to prevent stock collapse, and the labor situation at processing plants is brutal. Many facilities are running at about 70% of normal capacity because they simply cannot find enough workers. I checked 3 stores specifically to look at canned fish last week. All 3 had noticeably reduced selection. Canned tuna that was $1 a can is now $2.50 or more in my area. Wild-caught salmon is pushing $6 a can. Here is what makes this non-negotiable for your stockpile. A single can of tuna carries about 25 grams of protein, and every can requires 0 preparation. Open it and eat. Storage is simple. Keep cans cool and dry. Canned fish easily holds 3 to 5 years. Start stacking now. Protein handled. Now let's move to the grain that entire civilizations were built on. Number 12. Dried corn. Long before supply chains and refrigeration existed, this grain kept entire populations alive through winters, droughts, and wars. Corn survives because it dries down hard. But here is what is happening right now that most people are missing. Corn is being diverted in record quantities to ethanol production, to animal feed, to industrial uses. and the portion left for direct human food products is getting squeezed. Drought conditions across major corn-growing states last season pushed yields significantly below projections. Masa flour for tortillas, dried hominy, cornmeal, all of it is quietly tightening on shelves. Whole dried kernels last the longest because air touches less surface area. Keep it sealed, dry, and away from pests. What makes dried corn irreplaceable is its range. Grind it into flour, boil it into porridge, bake it into cornbread, or stretch it into thick meals when food is thin. If this is your first time here, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next breakdown. Done? Let's keep going. Number 11. Rolled oats. This staple is pure nutritional insurance, delivering sustained energy when your body needs fuel and your kitchen options are limited. And it is tightening fast on store shelves right now. Canada grows a massive percentage of the world's oats, and both Canadian and American growing regions have been hammered by alternating drought and excessive rainfall. Either one damages crops and neither is predictable. But here is the supply chain problem that compounds everything. Oat milk exploded in popularity over the last few years, and that trend quietly pulled a significant portion of oat production away from traditional food products. There are now two major buyers competing for the same oat supply: food processors and beverage manufacturers, and the food side is losing ground. I have noticed at stores that oat sections are thinner than they were a year ago. A large container of rolled oats that was $4 is now $6.50 or more. Store them right and they hold for decades. Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers or sealed food-grade bucket. Steel-cut versions last even longer because they are less processed and more structurally stable. Oats handled. Now let's talk about the legume nobody is watching closely enough. Number 10. Dried lentils. They look humble in a bag, but in a real shortage scenario, dried lentils are one of the most strategically valuable foods you can have on your shelf. Loaded with protein, iron, fiber, and folate, and they cook faster than almost any other legume without soaking. Right now, lentil production is under pressure from drought conditions across major growing regions in Canada and the Pacific Northwest, which together supply the bulk of North American lentils. And because lentils are increasingly being exported to feed growing demand in South Asia and the Middle East, the domestic supply available for US consumers is quietly shrinking. The reason lentils store so well is simple. They are dry, low moisture, and carry almost no fat to go rancid. Your only real enemies are damp air and pantry pests. Ditch the flimsy store bag. Move them into mylar with oxygen absorbers or airtight jars. Keep them cool and dark. Stored right, lentils hold for years without losing a gram of nutritional value. Stack them now while the price is still reasonable. Legumes handled. Now let's move to the grain that has been in the news for a reason. Number 9. Rice, white and jasmine varieties. This is the grain you want when supplies tighten and you need something that feeds a family on almost nothing. White rice in particular. Not brown, not instant, because brown rice carries oils that eventually go rancid, making it a poor candidate for serious long-term storage. The global situation right now is unprecedented. India, the world's largest rice exporter, banned exports of several varieties to protect its own domestic food supply. Other countries tried to fill the gap, but cannot produce anywhere near enough to replace that volume. And domestically, American rice production is also under pressure. Water shortages in California and Arkansas, two of the biggest rice-growing states, are forcing farmers to reduce planting. Nothing humbles a hungry household like realizing the most basic grain on the planet has become hard to find. A 20-pound bag that was $15 a year ago is now over $22 in many stores. For serious long-term storage, use food-grade buckets with gamma seal lids and oxygen absorbers. Stored properly, white rice lasts 25 to 30 years. Every shopping trip, add a bag. Prices are not going down. Rice handled. Now, let's bring in the shelf-stable protein nobody thinks to stockpile. Number 8. Powdered eggs. Nothing humbles a breakfast routine like losing access to fresh eggs, and that moment is closer than most people realize. Avian flu has wiped out flocks across the country in waves that keep returning. Egg prices have already hit historic highs, and supply disruptions are becoming routine rather than exceptional. Powdered eggs are the answer the grocery store does not advertise. With the moisture stripped away completely, bacteria have nothing to work with, and the product can run your kitchen for years without refrigeration. For long storage, keep it sealed, cool and dry. Non-fat powdered egg products stored in sealed mylar containers hold for 5 to 10 years without meaningful nutrient loss. When you open a package, transfer to an airtight jar and use it sooner, as air and humidity begin working immediately. Dividing your stash into small jars keeps the main supply protected while giving you just enough for daily scrambles, baking, or emergency rations. In cooking and baking, the difference is virtually undetectable. Egg supply is not stabilizing. Stack powdered eggs now and make the fresh supply a bonus rather than a necessity. Breakfast handled. Now let's secure your cooking fat. Number 7. Ghee, clarified butter. This is a cheat code for when butter becomes impossible to find and you still need a cooking fat that performs under pressure. While regular butter is quietly being pulled back by manufacturers who have discovered they make more money turning cream into specialty cheeses and coffee products, ghee sits at a completely different level of shelf stability. Ghee dodges the spoilage problem that kills regular butter by removing the water and milk solids entirely, leaving mostly pure fat. No water means far fewer spoilage pathways, a dramatically higher smoke point, and a product that holds in your pantry without refrigeration for 1 to 2 years or longer. Butter production at processing plants has been cut by manufacturers prioritizing higher margin products. A regional sales rep told me his company cut butter output by 15% this year alone, and that is industry-wide. Ghee is where the smart money is going. Store it in a sealed jar away from heat and sunlight. Use a clean, dry spoon every single time. Moisture introduced by a wet spoon is the only real enemy. It is also easier on sensitive stomachs since the milk solids are gone. Ghee is a powerhouse. Now let's talk about a liquid that refuses to go bad no matter what. Number 6. Apple cider vinegar. Tell me of another liquid as versatile as raw apple cider vinegar. 1 minute it is preserving vegetables, the next it is cutting grease off surfaces, and somehow it still improves gut health and helps your body absorb nutrients better. What makes it a serious stockpile item is stability. That cloudy mother floating inside is live fermentation culture, and it is the reason this vinegar barely ages. The high acidity creates an environment where harmful microbes simply cannot establish a foothold. And right now, ACV is quietly coming under supply pressure. Vinegar production relies heavily on corn as a base material, and corn diversion to ethanol is squeezing that input supply. Random shortages have already popped up in several states. Stocked 1 week, completely gone the next. Storage is simple but strict. Keep the cap sealed tight and store it away from direct sunlight. Kept cool and dark, it can remain fully potent for years without any special treatment. Some people keep the same bottle alive for a decade by adding to it as they use it. Beyond cooking and preservation, ACV is a surface disinfectant, a laundry booster, and in a pinch, helps make questionable water safer to consume. Few pantry items pull that much weight. Now let's move to the sweetener that was used to preserve food long before refrigerators existed. Number 5. Pure maple syrup. Archaeologists have found preserved sweeteners in ancient storage vessels that were still usable after thousands of years. And pure maple syrup operates on that same principle of high sugar concentration, creating an environment where microbes cannot survive. But right now, production is tightening in ways that have the industry genuinely worried. Maple syrup comes from a very specific geography, primarily Canada and the northeastern United States. And it depends on a precise seasonal temperature pattern that climate change is disrupting. Warmer winters are shortening the sap running window. Late freezes are damaging trees after they have already broken dormancy. The 2024 harvest came in significantly below projections across major producing regions, and because maple syrup demand has grown globally, particularly in Asia and Europe. There is now a worldwide buyer pool competing for reduced supply. Prices are moving fast. Open a bottle and you will smell the difference from imitation immediately. That is how you know you have the real product. Once opened, store in the refrigerator to prevent mold. Unopened, a cool, dark cabinet holds it safely for years. If mold ever appears, skim it, gently reheat, and the syrup is fine. A small drizzle turns plain oats or cornbread into something that actually feels like a meal. Stack real maple syrup now, before the price reflects what is actually happening in production. Now, let's close out the final stretch. Number 4. Whole grain flour. The funny thing about flour is that most people think of it as something that has always been cheap, plentiful, and basically infinite. That assumption is changing fast. Durum wheat, the specific variety used for quality bread and pasta flour, took serious hits last year from drought conditions across North Dakota and Montana, which produced the majority of the US supply. Yields were down significantly. The wheat that did grow had lower protein content, which means manufacturers need more of it to produce the same quality output. Then layer on top of that, transportation costs have exploded, packaging shortages have slowed production lines, and global demand for wheat has surged as other grain-producing regions face their own weather crises. A 5-pound bag of name-brand flour that was $2.50 2 years ago is now pushing $4.50 or more in many stores. And whole grain and spelt varieties are even tighter because they represent a smaller production run to begin with. For long-term storage, transfer flour immediately out of paper bags. Paper bags are the weak link, absorbing moisture and inviting pests. Move it into airtight containers or vacuum-sealed mylar. Kept cool and dry, whole grain flour holds for years. Buy extra every trip and keep rotating. Flour handled. Now let's talk about the seasoning that is being overlooked until it disappears. Number 3. Black pepper. The funny thing about this pantry staple is that it sits in a tiny jar on your counter and nobody thinks twice about it until it is gone. And right now, whole black peppercorns are heading toward a serious shortage that most consumers have no idea is coming. Vietnam supplies about 35% of the world's black pepper, and Vietnam is in the middle of a historic drought cycle that has hammered pepper crops for 2 consecutive seasons. Last year's harvest was down 22%. This year's projections are worse. And here is what makes this particularly painful. Pepper takes 3 to 4 years from planting to harvest. Even if conditions improve tomorrow, we are locked into shortages for years. Grinding peppercorns too early kills shelf life fast. Pre-ground pepper loses its potency in months because grinding exposes the volatile oils to oxygen immediately. Whole peppercorns avoid that problem entirely. Their hard outer shell seals the flavor oils inside until the moment you grind them. Store them in a tight glass jar in a cool, dark cabinet, far from the stove and direct heat. Grind only what you need for each meal. Stored whole, peppercorns hold their punch for years. A 5-pound container from a restaurant supply store costs around $28 and is the equivalent of about 40 grocery store bottles. Buy whole. Buy now. Flavor handled. Now, let's get to the top 2. Number 2. Honey. Raw. Unfiltered. Open a jar and you will smell something that has no expiration date. Literally. Archaeologists have found jars of raw honey in Egyptian tombs that were thousands of years old and still perfectly usable. That is not a marketing claim. That is chemistry. Honey lasts because it plays dirty against bacteria. It is packed with natural sugars, has almost no free water, and carries enzymes in raw versions that actively work against microbial growth. But right now, honey supply is tightening at a pace that has beekeepers and buyers genuinely alarmed. Colony collapse disorder has been decimating bee populations for years. Pesticide exposure, habitat loss, and disease are reducing hive counts across the country faster than they are being replaced. Less pollination means less honey production. And global demand is rising. The price of raw honey has been climbing steadily, and supply from major producing countries is not keeping pace. Storing it is simple. A tightly sealed jar in a cool spot, water kept out at all times. If it crystallizes, that is not spoilage. That is chemistry. Warm the jar gently, and it smooths right out. Raw honey does not just sweeten, it is an antimicrobial agent, a wound treatment, a cough suppressant, and a preservative for other foods. Few items on this list pull that many roles. Stack it now while jars are still available at a reasonable price. Number 1. Whole dried legumes, mixed varieties. Dried lentils come from the final processing stage of a crop that is increasingly being exported before it ever reaches domestic shelves. And that is just the beginning. Dried chickpeas, black beans, kidney beans, pinto beans, all of them are quietly tightening right now for the same overlapping reasons. Bean production requires significant water, and drought conditions across North Dakota, the Central Plains, and major growing regions have hit yields hard for 2 consecutive seasons. Lower yields mean less hitting the market, but here is the processing bottleneck that compounds everything. Canning capacity is limited. There are only so many facilities, and they are running at maximum capacity trying to serve every product category at once. When one line has issues, it ripples through the entire system. A procurement specialist told me their canned bean orders are being filled at about 70%, but dried varieties are being impacted too. Export demand from Europe and Asia is pulling supply away from domestic markets before it can reach your store. Dried beans and chickpeas store almost indefinitely when sealed properly in mylar bags with oxygen absorbers or airtight jars. Ancient beans may need longer cooking times, but they never lose their nutritional value. Protein, fiber, iron, all of it waits patiently in those sealed containers for however long you need. This is the single most cost-effective, calorie-dense, protein-rich item on this entire list. And it is quietly getting harder to find every month. Stack it deep, store it smart. This is your foundation. You have just seen the foods that are quietly slipping out of supply chains right now. The ones truly belong in a serious stockpile. If you want to level this up, our next video will break down the foods to stockpile that never expire. Yes, foods that never expire. Don't miss it.